A young man is woken up by a ghastly vision. And then we take a look at the story of a young boy out at the movies. But what happens when this boy walks into a movie theater that has a different vision in mind for him? Because today he's not simply going to see a movie, he's about to see into another world. Today on Dead Rabbit Radio. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. I hope you guys are having a great day too. I hope you guys are having tons of fun doing whatever you're doing. We got a lot of stuff to cover today. So first off, running into Dead Rabbit Radio Command, everyone get on your feet and give it up for everyone's freakish fun man, Eminent Clown. Woohoo, yeah, wee, haha, yeah, he's doing somersaults, woohoo, he's throwing balloons up in the air. Jason, he's not throwing them, he's just letting them go. Eminent Clown is one of our newest Patreon supporters. That is why he is going to be our captain, our pilot this episode. If you guys can't support the show financially through the Patreon or the merch store, I totally understand. I really do. Just help spread the word about Dead Rabbit Radio. That helps out so much. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. Dead Rabbit Radio is your favorite paranormal show. That is how you can help the show grow. Before we officially get started, though, I want to say this. So, I am pre-recording a bunch of episodes because I will be going on vacation shortly. I travel to California once a year to spend time with my family. I'm gone for a month. I don't want to give you guys a month with no episodes, so I'm trying to pre-record a bunch of them. The reason why that's important is I, at this point, am trying to record about 16 episodes in roughly 10 days. So, the quality's going to be there. Right? I'm not going to say, so if the show starts sucking, that's why. But there probably will be times where you may not even notice it. But I know that I've done this in the past, and sometimes the episode order starts to get mixed up, and because I don't know what day it's on. So if you guys are used to me wishing you well for the weekend, that's not going to happen, right? Because I won't know what day episodes are going to come out, and I've also, unfortunately, had episodes come out in the wrong order, so sometimes I'll reference things on an episode that hasn't been released yet. Now that I'm aware of those being problems, I'm trying to sort that out. But just to let you know, so we will be recording episodes 16 in 10 days. That's not too bad, right? That's about 2 a day. Right? In the hottest time of summer, we're going to see how it goes. There will be a 2-week break at the beginning of August. There will be no episodes, but I will be running the daily Retro Rabbits. I know you guys really like those. I didn't do it in my last break because I needed just a clean 2-week, no Dead Rabbit Radio stuff. And then we'll be starting episodes back up around, so basically from August 1st to August 13th, there'll be no new episodes. Again, that's the plan, right? I have to record 16 episodes in 10 days. I really hope that I can get it done, because I want to keep out the content, and the content will be good. It's not an excuse of why I'm just like, whatever, I'll just talk about whatever. Eminent Clown, I'm going to toss you the keys to the Jason jet ski. Everyone hold on to his waist, wrap your hands around his clowny waist, put your face right up against his pasty white skin makeup as we leave behind, I know some of you guys hate clowns, that's why I'm tormenting you. As we leave behind Dead Rabbit Radio Command, Eminent Clown, why don't you jet ski us all the way out to an apartment complex? Nice water spray, right, during these hot days of summer. We're like, can we just drive around the jet ski for the whole episode? Nope, we gotta get off, dry off. You brought a towel, right? We're walking up to this apartment complex. We don't have an exact location or the names of these people, but we're gonna call the guy who posted this online, we're gonna call him Phil. He's 26 years old, and he shares an apartment with his girlfriend. We will call her Abby. They live in a cozy little apartment complex. That's how he described it. And he says the way that it's set up is that you have 4 apartments, and they all share a main entrance. And because of that, you got to know your neighbors really well. You would very often, run into them as you were coming and going to your own place. And they ended up meeting and getting to know their downstairs neighbor. They lived in the upstairs part. They had a downstairs neighbor, who we will call Bruce. And he's an old hippie guy. Yo, dude, back in my day, a dime bag actually cost a dime. Oh, the doobie-doo. Smoking out, having fun. Bruce. Bruce, the old stoned hippie. Now, Bruce, for money, he was an old stoner who needed to work. Now, his choice of work, odd, I would say, for someone who loves smoking weed. He's a cab driver. Now, I know people who go, oh, I drive better on weed than I do sober. And to those people, I always said, then you smoke bad weed. Because I, for a fact, know that is not true. When I used to smoke weed, I was not a better driver. In fact, you could argue I was much worse. To be fair, let me put this in context. People hated driving in cars with me. Not because I was stoned all the time. That made it fun. Where are we going, Jason? The Jelly Belly Factory. Yummy! And after that, we'll hit up Denny's. They'd get in the car with me and they'd be like, damn it. Because I would smoke blunts while driving. People would go, listen, man, I don't want to get shot by whatever cop pulls us over. Because obviously, he has every right to. You're smoking a blunt while you're driving your car. So I'd be driving down the road smoking weed. And people would be like, dude, okay, we can go to the Jelly Belly Factory. I don't think they're going to let us in. Because we clear reek of weed. You've been smoking the entire trip. So it didn't make me a worse driver per se, but I was not a safe driver. We'll say that. Like every time I took a corner, ash is falling on my legs. That did happen. Let go of the steering wheel, trying to put the fire out. I definitely wasn't a better driver. People say, oh no, when you smoke weed, you're a better driver because you're on edge and you're super cautious. Just be a better driver and don't smoke weed while you're driving. If you want to smoke weed on your own time, they go, Jason, longtime listeners of the show go, Jason, you're leaving out a key detail. Yes, you smoked blunts while you were driving, but you haven't revealed how you usually smoked weed back then, which probably had something to do with being an impaired driver, and that's true. So I used to smoke weed. I had blunts, right? And smoke a joint, you use a bong or a pipe, but I was smarter than all the other potheads out there. Because if you got pulled over with a pipe, you went to jail. If you got pulled over with a bong, there's bong water all over your car. No, I was like, dude, that's so dumb. You're going to get caught with a pipe on you. Don't be like me as I'm driving down the street smoking a blunt. Now, you got to be more cautious like me. I'm far more subtle about it. I never wanted to get busted for having paraphernalia on me. So what I did was I smoked weed using a soda can. I would take a soda can, like a Coke can, because that's usually what I drink, and then I'd poke little holes in it. Can I give this information out? Is this going to get the episode banned? You poke little holes in the soda can, and then you put the nug on there, and you inhale through the part of the can where you drink. It's like perfect. It's perfect if you don't mind breathing in paint and aluminum every time you smoked weed. I'll tell you this, man. I got pretty high smoking that way. Must have had some pretty good weed. And people go, well, Jason, okay, sure, you won't get arrested for having a glass pipe in your car. But don't you think it'll be a little suspicious that you have a Coke can crumpled up that's all charred on the top? And I said, oh, see, you're not thinking like Jason. You're not doing a Jason thinking. You see, as I get pulled over, I'll just crush the can. And then they won't know. They'll just think I'm super strong. And they're walking up to the car, they hear a aluminum being crunched, and then it just looks like a crunched up can. So I turn and I go, good evening, officer. My eyes are super red. I have this smell of aluminum and paint coming out of my nostrils. Yeah, so that probably could have had something to do with me being too high to drive. But I remember that one time, this is the last time, I'll get on to the real story in a second, but I was eating weed because I found out that you could get have I told this story before? You could get really stoned eating weed. And I also just had a bunch of Bammer. I just had a bunch of dried up brown weed at the time. So I said, I'll eat it. I'll just eat it up. Now, this wasn't my first time eating weed. I'd eaten it before, and I hallucinated Bud Bundy coming out of the television set. This wasn't the first time. The second time I was eating weed, and you go, oh, so you're making brownies and pancakes and stuff? Nope. I was just eating. I just had a bunch of Bammer. It was like a lot. And I would eat it with a spoon. eating seeds and sticks. My mouth's bleeding. I'm like, the blood loss makes me feel higher. I would pour it on top of a cookie. I wouldn't make an actual cookie. I would like cover it on a cookie. But then even that got to be too much work. I was so lazy. I wouldn't even put weed on something edible. I was just eating weed with a spoon. Just like brown weed. And then you would have to wait like 4 to 6 hours. It took a really long time for it to kick in. But it would kick in. And it took until you pooped for it to leave. So you could be high for like a day or two. Like super duper high. If you thought smoking aluminum and paint was getting you high. Oh, you have no idea. Anyways, I ate a ton of it one day. And I went to work. And I drove. And it didn't go well, right? I show up at work. I worked at a retail establishment. And I walked in. And I put on my apron. And I stood behind my counter. And I helped one customer. And then I go, I can't do this. Because I was too stoned to be there. And I also didn't like the job. I didn't like the job. But anyways. I turned to my boss and go, I can't be here. I'm sick. And he's like, okay. And he can see roots growing out of me. I'm because the weed was really hitting me hard at this point. Well, then I was a good like 20 miles away from my home. So I had to drive home. And I was like, oh, dude, I'm like, if I'm too stoned to stand behind a register, how am I going to get home? So I white knuckle. Do not do any of this, by the way. I would white knuckle it. Super nervous and way too high to be on the road. And I'll never forget this. This is something that has always stuck with me all these years. Like, again, this was back in like 2002, 2003, somewhere around there. I got behind the giant fuel truck. You know, those semis that have those giant fuel tankers on them. Which is not a great place to be when you're stoned, right? You're just like, Now I might not just get in a car accident. I might destroy the freeway if I crash into this thing. But it wasn't just that. I was driving behind this huge semi and it had these giant fuel tankers on it. But they were that reflective metal. And the worst thing you can do when you're really, really, really high is to look at your reflection. And I was forced to drive right behind my reflection for God knows how long. I mean, miles and miles and miles. I was behind. I didn't want to swerve around them. I didn't want to go any faster than I already was. I didn't want to change lanes. And I'm driving behind this humongous oval that's a reflection. It's already a distorted reflection of my car and me. And then the truck started taunting me. I don't want to say I saw a face because I didn't fully hallucinate, but I'm pretty sure it was smiling at me. I'm pretty sure it had a mouth. And it was grinning at me. Like it was mocking me. I was like, oh, you mocked me, fuel truck, take this in. Drive right into it. And I remember just feeling so low. I thought, I'm trapped. I can't go any faster because I'm too stoned. Shouldn't even be behind the wheel of my vehicle. And now this semi-truck is making fun of me. This giant mouth is grinning at me because he knows I can't go anywhere. And I'm looking at myself driving, which is already mind-bending enough. So based on those stories, based on me eating a half a kilogram of weed, smoking paint, and smoking blunts while driving, based on that, I don't think anyone should drive stoned ever. I know a lot of people do. I don't think it's safe. Anyways, the reason why I brought all that up was because this guy's a taxi cab driver and he loves smoking weed. Don't think it's a good combination. You get in a taxi cab with someone and he reeks of weed and he goes, "Where you going, partner? Do you think you're going to have a safe drive?" Or you can get in the car. The next car is me driving. I was like, "Hey man, I just bought this 12-pack of Coke." You notice there's only 11 Coke cans. You're like, I think I'll take my chances with the old hippie. Anyways, Phil and Abby. I totally forgot about that. I totally forgot he was telling a ghost story. Phil and Abby live in an apartment above Bruce, who's the old stoner hippie. Abby also brought her cat, who we will call Stewie. This black cat, really nice cat. So in the house, it's Phil, Abby, and little Stewie. And below them is Bruce. Well, one night, Phil and Abby are deep asleep when all of a sudden Phil is awakened when he hears a growl in his ear. Phil initially doesn't think it's a scary growl. He assumes it's Stewie the cat. He assumes that it's the cat that they live with is just growling in his ear, and Stewie must want something. Stewie's trying to wake Phil up, so he hears the growl, and he's laying there with his eyes closed, and he's thinking, oh, Stewie, what do you need? But Phil opens his eyes, and he's not greeted with the sight of a cat staring right in his face. No. Instead, what he sees is a human face floating right next to him. It was a ghastly vision of a phantom face. However, where its eyes and its mouth should be were bottomless black voids. Oh! That's what I would assume a ghastly face would sound like. Phil wakes up and he sees this face right next to his own. At the same time, he sees Stewie running around the bedroom, freaking out. The cat's obviously noticing this as well. He's running around, jumping up the walls, trying to get away from whatever this is. But eventually the face dissipates. Stewie can't calm down, and neither can Phil. He said, I just laid there until the sun came up. There's no way he was going back to sleep after that. He doesn't know really what to make of it. He hadn't had any ghost encounters in this place before. Was it just a bad dream? You could chalk it up to that if the cat also wasn't reacting to it. The fact that Stewie was freaking out showed Phil that there was something in the room that night. Let's fast forward 2 weeks. And that is when Phil and Abby receive some troubling news. It turns out that everyone's lovable favorite stoned hippie Bruce hadn't been seen in a while. So a welfare check was called in. The police showed up to his downstairs apartment, and when they went in to make sure everything was okay, they found out he was dead. He died in his bathtub, and his body had been laying in the stagnant bathtub water for 2 weeks. Now, Phil, when he wrote this up, he posted it online underneath the name TBM365. He didn't say that it was a suspicious death. It sounds like it was just a natural death. Guy dies in his bathtub. When you do have a body in a bathtub for that long, you basically become human soup. But even a cannibal would turn down this meal, because it's like rancid meat. Cannibals are known for their pickiness. They're like, I prefer to eat my victims freshly killed, or sometimes while they're still alive. A body in water, the body starts to break down. You become human soup. I mean, it happens, right? It's unfortunate, but it happens. I always try to not dwell on how people died, because we have a tendency to do that. We go, oh my God, he died so horribly. But you just kind of have to forget the last 5 minutes of his life. Because who cares what happens after you're dead, is really what I'm getting at. But even if they had a horrific last 5 minutes or a horrific last hour of their life or what have you, they hopefully had a pretty normal, chill life up to then. And a happy one, hopefully a happy one. So, becoming human soup, some people might find that tasteless. Or a cannibal would go, actually, it's quite tasty. I just like my meat a little fresher. My point is that I wouldn't want to live above someone who was turning into human soup. Like, if I turned into human soup, it doesn't matter because I'm dead. I really don't care. But, I mean, going throughout the day, you get home, you're like, oh, you know what? For some reason, I have a hankering for minestrone soup. Yummy, yummy, yummy. Add some more meatballs to it, baby. Let's meat this baby up. They didn't know, but imagine if you found out for the past 2 weeks a man was slowly melting underneath you. Oh, man. You'd be bummed out. You'd be bummed out for a couple reasons. One, because Bruce was a nice guy. You felt bad that he died. Two, I don't have a problem with this, but a lot of people have a problem with the thought of dying and nobody finding their body for a while. Like, that freaks out a lot of people. As they get older, they're afraid that they're going to die and their body's just going to be decomposing in their house and nobody's going to notice. I really don't worry about it. Once I'm dead, I'm dead. I don't care what happens to my body. It would be weird, though, to be going about your day in this apartment complex, not knowing that the person who lives underneath you is not only dead, but is turning into soup. Quite odd, right? A little disturbing. But remember, we also have this ghost encounter or whatever it was that Phil saw. Because he sees it as one of two things. He said, one, it's possible that was Bruce's spirit screaming out for help. Oh! Because it happened around the same time. Not to the exact same moment, as far as we know. But he goes, it could have been Phil's spirit calling out for help. He said it's also possible that both of these things really scare him. He goes, one, the fact that this ghost was screaming out for help and we didn't know. I just thought it was a spooky face I saw in the middle of the night. I wouldn't have been like, Bruce, oh no. Oh no, I recognize those soulless black pit void eyes anywhere. Bruce. He goes, one, it was either Bruce's spirit manifesting, or two, it was whatever came to claim his soul. And to me, that's a lot creepier. But this is one of those questions that Phil will never really have an answer to. He doesn't know if it was the spirit of Bruce. He doesn't know if it was a soul collector. Either way, it will continue to haunt him, no pun intended, until the day that he himself dies. That's the only way he'll truly know the answer. And that would give you a different set of fear. One, feels like I'm never taking a bath. I'm never taking a bath again. But two, you would think, well, when I die, am I going to become a moaning face floating around? Or in the last moments while I'm alive, am I going to see such a ghastly visage? The last thing that I actually see with my human eyes is this horrible face coming at me to claim my own soul. He won't know the answer until he himself dies. And he won't be able to tell us, right? At that point, he'll be dead. He won't be able to tell us. Creepy story. Creepy story either way you look at it. Soul collector or a man's spirit wailing out for help, but no help came and he slowly turned into human stew. Imminent Clown, let's go ahead and toss you the keys to the world-famous Carpenter Copter. We are leaving behind this apartment complex. Why don't you fly us all the way out to the movie theater? We're headed all the way out to this movie theater. We don't have an exact location. We don't have the names of the people involved. The person who posted this online, we're going to call him Billy. And this story took place back in the 1970s, so quite a ways back. But the story will ask a question that I think is, at first, it'll sound ridiculous, but if you think about it, you'll go, Jason might be onto something. Jason might be onto something. You're like, probably not, Jason. Your questions are always so ludicrous. But I think this question is important. Let's get into the story. We're about to meet this guy, we'll call him Billy. He was a kid growing up in the 1970s. And every so often, his grandpa would take him and his siblings to the local movie theater. But this was no multiplex. This was actually an old movie theater that had been converted to show films. It was so old, in fact. It was originally built for live performances. So you had an orchestra pit at the movie theater. But there's no orchestra there now. They just still had all of the infrastructure for that. So they used to show vaudeville shows, things of that nature. But now you just go into the movie theater and you would see all of that. You would see the bigger stage. You would see the orchestra pit. And orchestra pits, if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, you're like, you can probably figure it out, right? It's a place where the orchestra played. However, generally speaking, there was a wall. There was almost like a wall a little bit higher than your waist that would separate the orchestra area from the audience. So if you sat in the front row, there would be this little wall here, so you could see the violinist, but you couldn't see their feet. I don't know why it was there. I don't know if it was a sound thing. It was probably to prevent people from walking around during the show. Whoa! Trip and land on top of the tuba. As funny as that would be, it was probably a safety thing, but it could also be a sound thing. And Billy goes to the movie theater with his grandpa on this particular day, and him and his siblings are there. They're walking through the theater, and the way for them to get to their seats is they have to walk down one aisle, cross the front, so they're walking in between the front row of seats, the orchestra pit, and the stage, and then go and find their seats. Because old theaters were laid out weird. They also have really tiny seats. But Billy's not worried about the seat size. He's walking through the theater with his grandpa, and they pass by the orchestra pit, and because he's a kid, curious, right? You're always curious as a kid, hopefully. As he's walking by the orchestra pit, he turns and he looks over the little wall to see what is behind it. Now, again, for him, it's probably like up to his chest. So he's not really having to scamper up and climb over. But when he looks over the orchestra wall, what he expects to see is a old floor. Well, that's it, right? That's it. There's nothing there. There's no longer an orchestra there. There's just a couple chairs kind of moved around in there. Right? A couple chairs where orchestra members used to sit. And that was it. No instruments, nothing. And he can see that just walking up, but when he peers over the wall, he assumes he's just going to see the floor. Instead, his curiosity pays off in spades. Because when he peers over that orchestra pit wall, he does not see a dirty floor. There is no floor. There's no floor. He can see directly into the basement of the theater. And what he sees in the basement is a large, and when I say large, he says it's the size of a man. A large man-sized egg on its back, or on its side, however you would describe an egg, not upright. But the reason why he said it was on its back was what he was looking at was this giant man-sized egg, and it had on it a painted mouth and painted eyes. The painted face is one of happiness, of joy. So there was a face painted directly onto this egg. He's looking down at it and he's like, what in the world? It's a man-sized egg. It has arms and legs. I think, is this like a giant prop from a Humpty Dumpty performance? But it's not a prop. And he knows that right away because he's looking at it and it's moving. Its arms and legs are moving and it's kind of rocking back and forth like it's trying to right itself up. And he's looking at this giant egg kind of rolling around in the basement and he's like, what? He turns to look to his grandpa, but then he turns back and looks into the orchestra pit. This time, the Humpty Dumpty has a different expression painted on his face. Gone is the wide smile and the bright eyes of this Humpty Dumpty figure. Now the face is painted with a look of frustration, a look of grief. And the Humpty Dumpty figure is really trying to sit up, but he can't. His legs are too small, his arms are too weak, and he's just rolling from side to side. Billy finds himself, for whatever reason, looking away once more from the basement. He looks back down. The egg is gone. He's now looking into an empty basement. Now he's looking around for someone to tell about all of this. He looks away and he wants to get someone's attention, his grandpa, one of his siblings, but only for a second. Because when he turns back and looks into the orchestra pit once more, the egg is gone, the basement is gone. All he sees now is a dusty floor of an old orchestra pit. Billy said over the years, he had continued to go to this theater. Even as an adult, he would visit this theater. And he said every single time I went back, I walked to the orchestra pit and I would look over that wall. And every single time after that, I would just see the floor. And then eventually, because the theater was so old and the movie business wasn't as booming as much, the theater was torn down. It's a peculiar, how do you say that word? It's a peculiar story for sure. A young boy looking over and, I mean, like, where do you even start, right? The idea of peering at something and it's not there, and then looking again and it's there. And what I'm talking about, just the floor. If you just had a story about a guy who looked into a room and at one point it was one room and then he looked back in and it was a different room, that in and of itself is bizarre, and you really have to wonder what that phenomenon is. We've covered stories like that in the past. I don't know if I could find it again, but we covered a story about like a guy who walked into a room and it was covered in vines. And then he walked back into the room and it was just a regular room. I mean, it's somewhere in 1,400 episodes. We've covered stories like that before, and you start to look at alternate realities or portals or voids. That in and of itself is bizarre. But the Humpty Dumpty figure on his back rolling around, I mean, that just takes it up another level, right? That really just makes it extra bizarre. And you wonder, what was he actually viewing? Was he looking into the basement of the theater? That's what he said it was. But does that imply that there really was a Humpty Dumpty man in the theater of that basement? Or was he looking into a basement, but it wasn't the basement of that theater? It was a basement from some other reality where Humpty Dumptys exist. The idea of some sort of entity appearing as a childhood figure, like the Easter Bunny. We've covered more stories than I thought existed about people seeing a real-life Easter Bunny. We've seen people encounter figures from television, like Big Bird. We did that episode recently where Big Bird's laughing. Ha ha ha! Just walking into this kid's bedroom. We've seen Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck. Hey everybody, it's Donald Duck! Freddy Kruger. Put these episodes in the show notes. These childhood, I don't know, you're like Jason, Freddy Kruger. It's not really a childhood folk hero. You could see an entity disguising itself as Humpty Dumpty. But here's my question. This is kind of what I was thinking when I read this. Do we have a responsibility to help the paranormal? And what I mean by that is, generally speaking, if a house is haunted, it is considered good manners that if there is a spirit trapped in your house, it doesn't want to be there, you should help it move on. Whether you do it or you get a professional to do it, like a medium or a spiritualist or a faith leader, it's considered something that you should do if you get the impression that they want to leave or they don't know they're dead or things like that. But in a case like this, you look and you see something that shouldn't exist. It's a lot harder to put it at the feet of a boy. But let's say it's us. Let's say it's us as adults. You look over the orchestra pit, you see a Humpty Dumpty man in the basement of a movie theater. Do you have a responsibility to jump over the wall? You're like, you land right on him. No! And then you fry him up, have a good meal. Do you have a responsibility to do what it takes to help the Humpty Dumpty man? Now, let's take this out of the equation right off. This is actually a Humpty Dumpty man. This is not a demon pretending to be Humpty Dumpty. He's like, I've practiced this for 10 billion years. Finally, my mimic skills pay off. No. If you jump over the wall and don't land on Humpty Dumpty, it's not a trap. It's not like you're going to go down there and your skin's going to be ripped apart by 1,000 razorkin. No. You're going to jump over the wall. You're going to land. Pull your knees out. Now you're on your back. You're just rolling next to Humpty Dumpty. You jump over the wall, you go to the basement, and now you have the ability to save Humpty Dumpty, get him up on his feet. And it's not a trap. He's not gonna go and goes, now I'm gonna scramble you. And he's all frying you up. It's nothing like that. You actually help out Humpty Dumpty. You see a paranormal creature in need, and you step in to help. Now, I'll say it's not a trap. I can't guarantee you'll get back. You may be stuck in Humpty Dumpty world. Which maybe you have a giant egg fetish. I don't know. Maybe this whole episode you've been sweating. You've been listening to it at work. They're like, hey, is everything okay? You're like, yeah, fine. I just got to rewind. I just got to rewind this podcast for the 18th time. Oh, tell me more about the egg. Maybe you have a big egg fetish. Maybe you're happy to be in the land of the humps. But, I mean, you go, Jason, might be the dumbest question you've ever asked on the show, but it's not. Because think about it. Imagine if you saw Bigfoot and his foot was in a bear trap. And he's trying to get to this portal. He's trying to get back to his home dimension. Because there's a lot of talk that Bigfoot's interdimensional. And, I think there's a lot of validity behind that theory. So you see Bigfoot, he has a bear trap on him, and he's half in his home world and half in ours. And he goes, "Oh, me Bigfoot, but bear trap bigger. Oh," and you see it. Would you undo the bear trap? Knowing that there's a chance that you'll get sucked into his home dimension. Do we have a responsibility to help paranormal entities? There is risk involved. It's not a trap. But there's risk involved. Would you walk past the bleeding Bigfoot? Would you walk past a overturned Humpty Dumpty man? And if you do, you're a heartless individual. I judge you. I'm so mad. I'm going to start asking when I see people at my live shows, "So did you save Humpty Dumpty?" It's funny because it sounds like a goofy question, but we should help people in need. That is something that is kind of built into the human system. We help people and things in need. That's why, even as a kid, they really have a hard time, killing sick butterflies. They'll be like, "Well, maybe we can take it back home. Maybe we can nurse it back to health." I go, "Or if you don't kill it now, the ants are going to get it." My ants! I throwing ants at the butterfly. You know what I mean? You always have this stuff. And even as adults, anything you want to tug on someone's heartstrings, show them videos about animals being rescued or animals getting a better life. Humans like to help things. They especially like to help things that aren't human. But they do like helping other humans as well. That's why when there's a huge catastrophe somewhere in the world, millions and millions of dollars flow from all over the globe to these areas. And a lot of them are just donations from ordinary people, not even government money. I think we'd have an intrinsic drive to step in and help, even if it was something kind of disgusting. If you were in the woods and you came across a slug monster, and he got all tangled up in the bushes, and it's just green ooze is shooting out everywhere. But he had a really sad look on his face. And he goes, "Help me. I have children at home." And there's just more goo shooting out of him and stuff like that. Here's the thing. That one I might be a little more cautious on. I'm watching the goo shoot out of him and it's actually destroying the plants. It's all sizzling away at it like Agent Orange. It's I don't know, slug man. You know what? You would probably get some gloves. You come back in a hazmat suit. You're all picking them up. You would, especially if it could talk to you, you would want to help out. Do we have a need, though, to help out? Should you jump over that wall to help out Humpty Dumpty? I think it's an interesting question. It's funny because the Bigfoot example and the Humpty Dumpty example, those are so cute and harmless. It'd be the same thing if you came across Santa Claus and he'd just gotten in a horrible car accident. And he's just sprawled out. There's presents everywhere. And he's like, "Oh, help me, and I'll give you all the presents you want." Or even if he didn't say that, he's completely unconscious. I'm all kicking him. I was like, "Why should I help you? Why should I help you, Santa Claus? How many presents do I get?" Blood's coming out of his ears. Even if you came across an unconscious Santa Claus, you'd help him. Or if you found the Easter Bunny and someone had poisoned him, someone had shot him with a tranquilizer dart, you'd probably help him up. I hope you would help him up. But what if it was a gross monster, too? What if it was something that just repulsed you physically, but you knew it wasn't evil? You just knew it wasn't. This isn't a trap, it's not a demon, but you see something that looks hideous. You are walking through the forest and you see a floating face, but it's laying on the ground. No eyes, no mouth, it's all... And it's just sprawled out on the ground, this human face. And you're like, "What? I should stop taking walks in the forest. There's a couple of trees behind me. Bigfoot, he has a bear trap on him. I should take up another hobby." You see this floating face, but it's laying on the ground. It's just like a flat, phantasmal face. And it's just like laying there and it's moaning. And you're like, face, is everything okay? It's just moaning. And then you see there's like a tree that's hollowed out. And inside of that, there's a bunch of faces of little kids going, Daddy, Daddy. And they can't come out of the tree because they're not old enough to float around. But this flat face, this harbinger of all the dead, is laying there on the ground. It ran out of juice. Couldn't make it home. Would you scoop up the face and then throw it into the tree? Would you help that ghost face get home? Because you're the only, in all of these situations, you're the only person who can do something. Would you? And here's the thing, I gave all those caveats, like it's not a trap, to make it easier for you to pick the answer that I wanted you to pick. But at the end of the day, you wouldn't know. You saw just this flat face with no eyes and no mouth, just a formless void where those orifices should be. That's the right word, right? You don't know 100% that it's not a trap. Would you scoop it up in your hands? It kind of feels like a jellyfish. And then throw it into the hole of a tree so it can be home with its kids. But you don't know, right? Maybe those kids are kidnappers. Maybe you just helped a perverted spirit, you freak. You wouldn't know. But you're the only person who could help. Do we have an obligation to help the paranormal? I do think in 99% of situations, we have an obligation to help people. There are obviously a few exceptions. I don't think you should help a murderer get away from the police. He's like, hey, man, come on. People help people, right? He's all covered in blood. You're like, I don't know. Here's sirens coming around the corner. Yeah, I guess people do help people. Hop in my car, let's go. Do we have an obligation to help the paranormal if we're the only ones who can step in? I'm not saying that Billy really could have done anything. And here's the thing, going back to that, and we'll wrap this up. There's the chance that he would jump over that wall and go into the Humpty Dumpty world and help this guy up, but there's no guarantee that he'd be able to get back to our world. And what a mind bender that would be for everyone else in that theater to see a little boy climb over a wall and then they never see him again. So there is a chance that you don't make it back. But in those moments, do we have a responsibility to help the paranormal? I would say yes, but there's a very big risk involved. You may not be able to make it back home, so your mileage may vary on that. You may prefer Humpty Dumpty Land. Probably not, right? I don't know what your dating life here is on Earth, but I can almost guarantee it's going to be a lot harder to date in Humpty Dumpty Land. But I imagine some of those girl eggs are pretty sexy. I'm sure that you could draw a pretty sexy Humpty Dumpty girl. Please don't flood my email with pictures of them. But, I mean, like, if it was an egg the size of a human, and it looked like a woman, well, it's like, it's just like drawing of boobs and drawing of a butt on the back. I'm like, ooh la la. Come here, baby. There's probably some perks. A lot of sexy eggs walking around. That's not, like, Jason, it doesn't. Now the question is, should we help the paranormal because you might be rewarded with sexy cryptids wherever you go? You're talking about sexy eggs. You've talked about sexy Bigfoot people in the past. You could help Santa Claus, and then you end up hooking up with a bunch of hot elves. Like girls who dress up like elves around Christmas time. That's like a weird thing that I'm into. I like girls who dress like, not Legolas elves, like Christmas elves. Wow, didn't expect that to come out 45 minutes into an episode or however long we're at right now. Elf, like Christmas elf, but like adult-sized women. Like the tiny ones, I'm not into that. But when you go to a place where Santa Claus is at around Christmas time, they always have like hot elves around. I'm down with that. Sexy eggs, apparently, is also something I'm totally cool with. I never thought about before. Sexy Bigfoot, I could do that. A sexy female Bigfoot, she's like 8 feet tall. She's carrying me around. I could do, a lot of cryptids, right? Sexy slug lady, that might be pushing it. Sexy floating face. I was like, this might work. We're going to have to try some things out. Sexy floating face. So yeah, see, that's the caveat for me. I will help the paranormal as long as I'm rewarded with sexy versions of whatever I help out in another dimension. deadrabbitradio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at facebook.com/deadrabbitradio. TikTok is at deadrabbitradio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm glad you listened to it today. Have a great one.